What's happening, financial coaches? It's Pete here. Want to talk to you today about what we coach on. And basically, I want to address something that, as I've observed coaches, this is one of the temptations that coaches have. And it's to coach on things that we haven't been hired to coach on. So I want to explain that a little bit because, when we're hired as a financial coach, there's a lot of things that go into finance, but you're not necessarily hired as a life coach or a meditation coach or a business coach. You might be, that may be your shtick or your niche. But, there are things that you can weigh in on. It doesn't mean that the client has asked you to weigh in on it or considers you an expert in that field. And here's the example. Basically, first, I should say the danger of doing this is that we can often have expertise in our field in the things that we're trying to discuss in the areas of need for the clients. And it can be very tempting to say, hey, I, as a coach, am identifying another area that you actually need some help on that I know I can help you in. And we kind of offer into that, or we kind of try to coach to that. And the client isn't necessarily there yet, right? And so, how do we deal with that? And, when we do go there, what's the drawback to that? And the drawback is usually the clients will maybe shut down and they just kind of seem aloof to it, and it hurts your credibility, and it hurts the next time when you want to offer up some advice on something that is important and that they should listen to, but they're kind of trained to tune you out. I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but any of these things can happen. So let me give you a practical example here. So I was working with a coach, and she was talking to her client, whose client had some debt that she wanted to pay off, and I knew, and the other coach could realize that really the debt was the symptom, the shopping habits, right? The impulse shopping, the lack of budgeting, the lack of control over the finances was really the problem. And while they were talking about ways to pay off the debt, and the client was really open to that, the coach kept bringing up, well, maybe we should talk about the shopping, and talk about some tips to kind of curb the shopping and the impulse buying habits and stuff like that. And the client was not catching on to it, right? The client may have been aware that shopping was a problem, but maybe they had it solved already, right? It's not easy to know just by looking at data. Maybe they just didn't want to admit it. Maybe they don't want to, talk about anything other than structurally the debt, and kind of talk more about the softer, more personal things about shopping tendencies and shopping addictions and whatnot. And so every time I saw this coach kind of talking about, well, trying to dig a little deeper into the underlying shopping habits, the client was kind of rebuffing them, kind of gently at first. And then by the end of the call, the coach kept going there, and she said, the client just said, I'm just not interested in that. I'm just not interested in that. And what ended up happening is that client did not re-up, did not come back. And it's something that happens, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But basically, what I felt like was happening here is that the client felt like they were not being attacked, but they were kind of being badgered on something that they didn't want to be badgered on. They called, they set up an hour because they really wanted to dig into the debt. And for the most part, most of that call was about tackling debt and some of the strategies and how to get it organized and how to get a handle on it, and when that would be paid off and some of that. But there was just enough pain in this, just enough annoyance that the client probably didn't feel like her particular priority in this case was the sole focus, right? That there was this left field topic of shopping and some of these other things. And the client never asked for that, And when the coach went there, the client didn't seem open to talking about it, right? It kind of reminds me of, I've got a friend, another story here. I've got a friend who is just like a savant with lawns. So he's got a beautiful lawn. He levels it and fills the low spots and aerates it and cross cuts it and deep thatches it, and creates his own, organic herbicides or whatever to kill weeds and whatnot. And it looks fantastic. I mean, it looks like a golf course, and it's his backyard, and everyone mentions it because it's just so pristine. And I, on the other hand, just go out when the grass gets pretty gnarly and cut it. And sometimes I will edge it if I have extra time or if the weather is not too cold or whatever. And I'm just about putting in the least amount of effort to keep it at a normal level where it doesn't raise suspicion from the neighbors that the house is abandoned. Okay. So To me, that's all I care to do. Now, I wouldn't mind having a beautiful lawn. I'm just not interested in putting in the effort that it's going to take to get there, which is maybe 5xing or 10xing the amount of effort. And so when I talk to him, and he's always like, here's what you should do. Here's a list of some of the chemicals that I get to really kind of take care of some of that Bermuda grass before it takes, and some of the creepy Charlie and the violets over here. And what I do is I also scatter a little clover for nitrogen and whatnot. And I keep getting offered up these suggestions, and not in a bad way, but I didn't ask for the suggestions. I didn't say that I want my lawn to look like your lawn, right? He's passionate about it, and that's great. But to me, it just kind of gets tuned out. I'm not going to do anything with it. And so I feel like, from a client's perspective, if we have a coach that keeps talking about these things that I haven't necessarily bought into as a problem yet, or a need, or even a desire, or a wish, it just seems like vapor. It seems like these discussions and topics. And sometimes if you're kind of intimating that I'm the problem, then I really kind of shut down on it. So what we need to do here is we need to serve, to me, what I think we need to do is serve the problem that is front and center. Solve the problem to the best of our ability that the client is asking for help with. And that might mean we don't have the permission to go into some of these other areas yet. I think it will take, and I think the most important part of the coaching client relationship is the rapport, right? Once we have that, the client has already hired you, so they must assume or presume that you have the expertise to help them with their problem. And so between having that expertise, hiring you on, then establishing that rapport, we can hopefully collaborate and work through that problem. Now, working through that problem, if they like that process, if they see, hey, this person is an expert, this person's method and manners work with me and are effective with me, then maybe I will be open to taking on that next project with them, kind of focusing on the next problem. And I'll be open to their suggestions. But it's very hard at the very beginning if you want to try to solve all these things, and there's really only one thing that client sees as a problem. Maybe that client does see something else as a problem, but they haven't necessarily opened the door to that conversation yet. So I think you need to earn the influence on that client by showing your expertise on the problem front and center. Kind of work through that, and then at some point, if you bring it up, right? Hey, maybe we should talk about, where did the debt come from, and what's the cause of this? Is this something that's going to creep up again? Are we doing work right now that's going to be undone, or we're going to have to redo later, or do we have some of these underlying things? Obviously, maybe some of the shopping, some of the purchases have created this. Is that something we need to talk about too? And if they're open to that, then great. Now that you've opened the door, hopefully you've had that relationship, so they're not going to just shut you out. It's not just an easy thing to say, hey, I don't want to continue with this relationship anymore. And if you've had a few sessions, you're probably at that place. But hopefully you want to build it to the place where where your interjections are going to be listened to, right? Your concerns, maybe your observations are going to be listened to by the client. And so you can open doors to that and have a conversation, and it won't feel like an attack, even if sometimes they're hard conversations. You're really kind of pressing them on that. You're really kind of going deep into things that are in their psyche and they're kind of in their embedded in their history and their value system, right? And some of the things that we're going to have to sometimes undo or at least mitigate and manage. But I think serve the need first. Focus on that. Certainly okay to bring up other things. I'm not saying that that's not the case, and sometimes we need to do that, and sometimes people will be super open to doing that. But I think when we see something and it's really obvious to us, and we have detected that the client is reluctant to go there, it's okay to back off of that. You don't have to solve everything in every call, right? But what we do need to do if we want to solve some of these things and people aren't ready is to figure out how we can tee it up so that we're not closing the door, that it's still open, right? And sometimes then we do have to close the door for ourselves because maybe it's such a critical problem. Maybe it's something illegal or immoral or something super critical, to their financial health or their well-being, that we need to kind of push it a lot. There will be some of those cases too. But basically, serve the need, earn that expertise, earn your ability to have influence with them, so that you have the opportunity to interject, to raise the red flag, to talk to them, to be open about other issues. And I think that will serve you and them much better. That's it. See you later.